Hello everyone, Bhavna Gunwani this side. Today in this session we will talk about constructors in Java. Basically, a Java constructor is a special method that is called when an object is instantiated. It is a block of code like a method, looks like a method, but it is a special method because this is implicitly invoked when an instance of the class is created. You do not need to take an initiative to invoke this method. At the time of calling constructor, at the time of instantiating an object of a class, the moment a constructor is being called and invoked, the memory for the object is being allocated in the memory. As I have already explained you initially, the moment we create an object of a class and the constructor is being called, the memory gets allocated to the data members of a class, but member function gets memory when they are called. Every time an object is created using new keyword, at least one constructor is called. I will tell you practically, if even though you do not have a constructor, a default constructor from the object class is invoked, which is the parent class of all the classes in Java. How does a constructor work? The moment an object of a class is created, the constructor of a class is invoked, which initialize the class attributes or whatever piece of code you write it up there. Generally, we do not use constructor for reading and writing purpose or doing any processing. We just use it to initialize the class attributes or instance attributes. This is how it works. There is a class. We instantiate a class by using new keyword, that is student. Student equals to new student. At the time of creating an object, as I told you, new student, memory gets allocated and the default constructor is invoked. Depending upon that, if you are not passing any parameters, the default constructor is invoked. So you must have a default constructor. If you do not have, then it will call the constructor from the superclass, that's an object class, to initialize the data members or class attributes with their default values, such as integer is 0, float is 0.0, string is null, Boolean is false, and so on. Let me tell you practically with the help of an example so that you have a bare enough idea how does it work and we can take it up forward. This is a most used concept in real-time approach. So let's get understand. Here we have a student class and we have 3 data members of it. I can also do one thing. I can use my display details to display the details of student, like student ID, age, and name. You can also see that I am not having any values into these data members. So when I'm going to instantiate my student class, what would be their value? Student equals to new student, and then student.display details. So you can see that I'm not assigning the values. I'm not calling an accept details, or even though I do not have. So my data members have initialized with their default values. Guys, what gets happen is each class is being extended from a parent class called object. What gets happen is when you do not initialize any values, then object class also has a special constructor that assign the default values to these data members. Let me just make a breakpoint here and debug my code. So you can see that I can go step into the student class is there. You can see that the object class is being invoked. Object class constructor is being invoked. Into this object class, the data being assigned by their default value. Once the class gets loaded, I'll just go step over, or I'll just get step out to the scanner class, and then display detail is being invoked. And that display detail is gonna call your data members, and that gets printed it up here. So guys, this is how the code works, how the default value gets assigned by the object class, but it is not suggested. You should always have your own default methods so that you can customize their values accordingly. For example, I just wanted to create one default constructor here that will initialize my student details like ID, name and age. The moment you have your own default constructor, then not at all object constructor will be invoked. Even though if you have any constructor in the class, the object class constructor is not gonna invoke at all. So here I'm gonna create the student class constructor this way, saying that this dot student ID equals to 1001, this dot student name equals to anonymous, this dot student age equals to 18. Do not bother it if we do not write this keyword like this way. I'll not get any error. I'll tell you why this keyword is being used in next 2 minutes. So this is how I have assigned the default values to them. Now the moment this new student will happen, the memory gets allocated to the data members of the student. Here the instance is being created and constructor is being invoked. This constructor to initialize their values. That's what we are getting it up here. Let me just first run. But you can see that here, guys, the default values are getting printed from the object class. There is no such reason. Either you can clear your workspace cache, because in most of the Java files we have a class student which is in the same package. So not sure which one it needs to be called up. So just changing the name here for your ease so that you can easily understand their invocation, because we are in the same package. Now let me just try and run. So you can see that student ID is 1001, name is anonymous and student age is 18. So this is how the default constructor is being invoked. You can also debug this and make a try. So you can see that the display detail is getting called up, and just I'll go step out to display the details. So guys, I hope the concept is clear to everyone. I'll tell you further the usage of this keyword along with the constructor and the members of the class being invoked, as well as I'll also tell you that we do have a default along with the default constructor, we do have a parameters constructor that can be used in the real time for the many purpose. So stay tuned. Thank you so much, everyone. Hello everyone, Bhavna Gunwani this side. Now today in this session we're going to discuss about parameterized constructors, default constructors that we have already gone through. There are two types of constructors: default constructor, which is also known as parameterless constructors, and another is a parameterized constructor. The one which do not have parameter is known as default, depending upon how and when we need default one and when we need the parameterized one. Let me tell you with the help of an example in which certain scenarios we can use parameterized constructor. Here we have a student info, here we have data members and one default constructor. The problem is with default constructor is, let's say I have two instances of student class. What will happen in this case, if I'm going to instantiate both the classes and I have a default value set in this parameterless constructor, to both the objects the same values gets initialized. You can see that 1001 anonymous 18, 1001 anonymous 18. That's not suitable for the real-time implementation. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to pass the information from here. This is having the ID 101. Here the name is Karthik and age is 34. So this is expecting that in your student info class there should be one constructor that should wait for the 3 parameters. I'm not deleting it as of now. Creating a parameterized constructor. student info. The first one is age. As of now, I'm keeping the name as student ID, variable name as name and age. Student ID will be initialized with ID parameter. Student name will be initialized with name parameter. Student age will be initialized with age parameter. So what will happen at this moment when you are passing three variables, depending upon what name you are providing them into the parameters, they will be calling up this parameterized constructor and this will be calling up the default one. Choice is yours, requirement is yours. In which particular scenario you wanted to call up the default one, in which particular scenario you would like to initialize. Let me help you out. The student 1 will have the initialized value, but student 2 will have the default value. Just give me a minute. So this is my student info that has 3 parameters that's being called up. Perfect. So guys, you can see that it's saying that no such function that waits for 3 parameters. It is there, but actually it is looking out for the class from the different file information, because in one package we could have only one class with the same name. So it is overlapping my requirement. Let me just redefine it with another name. You can see that student 1 is having the initialized value from the parameters, that whatever you are passing it up here. So it is going and assigning the values here and the same values gets initialized to them. But in the case of second student, the default values are assigned because for the second student, we are not passing any parameter. If you either pass the parameters here too like this, so in that case, in both the instances, the parameterized constructor will be called up and they will be initializing the values. So it is not mandatory that you should have default constructor also whenever you wanted to create a parameterized constructor, or vice versa. Depending upon the requirement, if you still have a need to create an object without the parameters, you can also have a default constructor in your case. Now I would like to tell you one more important thing. Right now we have given different names to the parameters here, like student ID, name and age. For example, if I am giving here student ID as a parameter name, student name and student age, assigning them as student ID, student name, student age. Now at this stage it gets confused that this is the parameter or this is the parameter, or this is an instance variable or this is the instance variable. Obviously the left hand side one is the instance variable. That's what we use a very special keyword here called this keyword. Let me tell you about that keyword first and then we'll take it up forward. So basically this is a reference variable. When we have that refers to the current object, we can use this keyword along with that. Can be used to refer current class instance variables just like student ID, student name. When we simply write this, it means an object of the current object of the particular class. Can also be used to invoke the current class methods. I'll tell you in a few minutes how the current class constructor can be invoked with the help of this keyword. It can also be used to return the current class instance from the method, just like returning this. But let me tell you here exactly what it happens. So whenever I'm saying that this dot student, this dot student name, this dot student age. So there are two meanings of this. First of all, it removes the ambiguity that this is the instance variable and this is the local variable. Second thing is, for example, when I am saying student 1 dot display detail, we are not saying anywhere where is the student 1. So whenever we are writing this keyword, it means that this is convert it implicitly into student 1. So every member like this dot student ID, this dot student name, this dot student age, or here as well, here this belongs to student 1, and when the student 2 dot display detail gets called up, then this belongs to student 2. So this keyword belongs to the current object of a particular class to which you are referring to, first important thing. And second important thing, it removes the ambiguity. One more tip you need to take care of. There are two kind of things. One is an instance member and one is a static members. Static members belongs to the class. They do not belongs to an object of a class. That's what you cannot use this keyword with static members. You can only use them with instance members. That's how I'll tell you in further discussion how we can differentiate the static members and the instance or non-static members. I hope things are pretty clear to everyone. Let me just run it once again and make you guys comfortable. Okay, so this is how the default and parameterized constructor being discussed. We also have two more concepts in the pipeline, that is constructor chaining and constructor overloading, that I will discuss in the next sessions. Until next time, stay tuned. Thank you so much. Hello everyone, Bhavna this side. Today in this session I am going to talk about constructor overloading. Basically, constructor overloading is again a vital important role gets placed in object-oriented approach. This says that it refers to the use of more than one block of statements or bodies with the same name. Here in the case of constructor overloading says that in one particular class we have more than one constructor. As I told you, we have constructor that has the same name with the class name, but we really need to make sure they should have different function signatures. We cannot have two default constructors with the same name in the same class. We cannot have two parameterized constructors with both numeric values. We need to really take care of either the data type in those parameters should be different, or their number of parameters must be different, or otherwise their sequence needs to be different. So this is something that you really need to take care of. I'm super excited to tell you how it plays an implementation role in coding. So let's get started. So as you know that this is a student information class and I already have a constructor overloaded into one particular class, that's student information. This is one constructor that is a student information, and this is the another constructor that is a student information. You can see that student ID, name and age, there are 3 parameters and there is 0 parameter. So you can say that they have a different number of parameters, 0 parameter in this constructor and 3 parameters in this constructor. If by any chance you wanted to create one more constructor, parameterized constructor, you can create it, but not with the same sequence or the type of the parameter. For example, you cannot change the type of the parameter. You still want these 3 parameters, so that what you can do is you can change the sequence. What the sequence saying that here we need to first pass 2 integers and then student, then this constructor gets called up. Let me do this for student 3. So here we are saying that 3, this is student 3, 1003. So if I will pass, one thing more I wanted to tell you, let me not write this way. When I am using this enumeration, it is telling me I have 3 constructors. Which one to call? Default? No. Integer, string, integer? No. Integer, integer, string? Yes. So first I am passing integer, then I am passing age, and then I am passing Bhavna. Let's say I am writing my name only. So this will call the third constructor. For your ease, I can make a breakpoint which constructor to invoke. So you can see that debugging has been started. Student 1 display details. Let me do one thing, terminate this and do it again. So you can see that this is calling the first constructor. Then this is calling the display detail. Then this is, one second. So this was calling the first student, this was calling the default one, second one, and the third one was calling the integer, and string. So guys, we can also have multiple methods in the same class with different signatures that we will discuss in the case of polymorphism. That is a concept of overloading and overriding comes up there. So stay tuned for that discussion also. Until next time, stay tuned. Thank you so much. Hello everyone, Bhavna Gunwani this side. Today in this session, I am going to talk about constructor chaining. Chaining itself says that to call or invoke one constructor from the another one. So it is a process of calling one constructor from another with respect to the current object or a particular current class in which they are defined. The real purpose is to pass the parameters through a bunch of different constructors that being invoked from the main method, then has a purpose to initialize different values in the different constructor depending upon their purpose, so that the constructor chaining would be required. In the case of inheritance, that plays a very vital and important different role that I will be discussing it up there. As it is written, it occurs through inheritance. Partially true, it also occurs within the same class also as it is written. It can be done in two ways. It means constructor chaining can be done within the same class. Then it means in one class we have 5 constructors, calling one constructor from the another one and so on. And the second, that it can be done in the case of inheritance through inheritance, that we wanted to call a parent class constructor from the child class. We use a super keyword for that. So let me help you out with how it gets implemented practically. Through inheritance, I will tell you later the moment inheritance gets started in the next session. Right now I'm telling you within the same class how the constructor chaining can be achieved. So let's get started. Here is a student information class that has a default constructor, parameterized constructor with 3 parameters. And here we have a parameterized constructor with 3 parameters with a different sequence. For example, coming up in this main method, instantiating my student information class with the default values. So this will call the default constructor. From the default constructor, I wanted to call the another constructor. So within the same class, we use this keyword. You can see that it is giving me options to invoke the constructor. Calling this, and I'm reinitializing the values manually as of now. In the real time, we'll be discussing in a different approach. Passing here Bhavna. Age is, let's say, 23 I'm passing. So this will call this parameterized constructor where the first parameter is integer, second is string, third is integer. It will come up here. In case you wanted to call for any reason this constructor that has integer and name, that again you need to call this up, and this integer and name needs to pass 1002. Age is 20. Student name is, let's say, Gautam. So any idea what would be the output, guys? This is going to call the default one, but from the default one, first we are calling this parameterized one. From this parameterized, we are calling this parameterized one. So at the end, value initialize is Gautam, but after coming back to the student information, they are again initialized with the default values. Purposely, I have done that. You can also remove it if you don't want. So according to me, the default values should be the final outcome. Let me just check and confirm. Here is 1001 anonymous N18. I hope the concept is clear to you, how to call the constructor from another constructor and chain them within the same class. One important thing or tip I'm telling you, that in the one particular class you can only have this chaining at the very first statement, and after that you write others. This should be the first invocation in the constructor in the case of chaining. So I hope the concept is clear to you. Moreover, things coming up in a mini project, everything gets sorted together into one pipeline. So I'm super excited to take you up through this journey. Until next time, stay tuned. Thank you so much.